Howdy.
Guys, we're live. Sorry, I hit the live button just as I hit the other button too. So, just so you know, we are live. Kevin, are you okay, man? You had a heck of a day.
Yeah, I did have a heck of a day. So, yeah, you know, it's funny about I don't know how many billion people there are in the world, but none of them probably was, you know, on a conference call talking to members of the 1980 Olympic team. They hear a waterfall-like sound from their kitchen, and then run in and see water gushing, and that would be the right verb, gushing, out of my ceiling and all my light fixtures in my newly renovated kitchen. That's what, you know, this was renovated in, you know, 2014. So, you know, pouring down on my marble top island, and then of course, you know, not even thinking, okay, well, you know, wanting to deal with this issue, trying to figure out where the water turnoff is in my house. I've been here forever, but I've never had to turn off my water. So, you know, I you know, had to scramble around figuring that out. My daughter came over, and then realizing that the water from the first floor was seeping down into my basement and right into my memorabilia room. So,
Oh my God!
Oh no!
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, there's some losses, but you know, I have a lot of stuff, and you know, I would say, you know, it wasn't nothing that has, you know, great sentimental value. Like, you know, like if it had rained down in my office and, you know, my photos and some of the things that I've, you know, had, that would have been tragic. But this is stuff that, you know, it's just kind of extra memorabilia. So, wasn't into the world. You know, I got the, you know, the plumbers coming and the insurance companies coming, and everybody in life has gone through that. So it's,
did you snap your fingers and like an Allstate person show up like it's supposed to?
Yeah, no. I have Tucker Insurance. I think I have Progressive. So it'd be interesting to see, because, as I said to my wife, you know, I've been a homeowner for, you know, more than 30 years, and
You've more than paid for this kitchen.
well, yeah. Well, my point is, you know, I've never filed a claim that I'm aware of.
Right.
So, you know, will this be catastrophic? Will my rates go up? I mean, what'll happen?
No, it shouldn't. I mean, you know, you pay that long, and so I always say, you know, when you get like, you know, you've more than paid for that car accident whenever we've used our insurance, which is rare. But it's like, you know, gosh, the money you pay for insurance, homeowners insurance, over the years, it's just
In a much less catastrophic example of this, my brother a few years ago had his collection of records, and he had moved back into our family home for a few months, and he had a collection of a couple hundred, you know, maybe 300 records, and there was no place to put them other than on the floor, piled up on the floor.
Be right back. Listening.
Well, lo and behold, there was rain one day, and the sump pump didn't work, and the water flowed right to the records. And the homeowner's insurance only covered about $2,000 worth of the, you know, damage on these records. And there was a lot of jazz stuff, but there was a lot of original master recordings, things of that nature. Some of the records were fine, but the covers were all destroyed. And if you know anything about records, you know, the cover art and everything is half the value. So, you know, it was all destroyed. The only thing that it didn't get destroyed is he had an original master recording of Sgt. Pepper that was double wrapped in plastic that did not get touched. Other than that, everything else was pretty much destroyed, and it's pretty much still sitting in the basement right now.
Well, at least the Beatles were saved.
What's that?
At least the Beatles were saved.
Yes, that is true. At least the Beatles were saved. But yes.
Not that the top players in the NHL know who can name the Beatles. Have you seen that? That's really fascinating to me. Have you seen that video?
No, I have.
Well, I saw it at the All-Star game. I'm sure you did too, Russ. When they played it, and they have all the stars in the NHL today, and the question is simply name the four Beatles. And as I recall, only one person could do it. right?
Oh my God.
0-1. Yeah, it made me.
That's insane. Really?
Yeah. But if you think about it, I mean,
Yeah.
people under 30 really weren't around during the heyday of the Beatles. So I guess it does make sense, but it was still shocking to me that
It is. That's a little shocking because the Beatles are historic, beyond a lot of this stuff.
Well, it does make me a little bit ill.
Dog Jordan sleeping next to me. That was what I did before.
It does make me a little ill that and not that they played this song very much over the last 2 months, but early in the season or late last season, the victory song for the Leafs in their locker room after the game was Taylor Swift's "Shake It Off."
Yeah, that's funny because there's a lot of bizarre victory songs in NHL locker rooms that you would just never imagine these guys listening to.
Well, lucky for you, they didn't play that much, Mike.
Yeah, they haven't played it all that much, I know.
And they're not going to play it much for the rest of the season either.
Yeah, but I've heard, sometimes there was a couple, and we talked about this before, but just I'm amazed at how, what these kids are listening to these days on these hockey teams. I mean, you would not. It's not what you'd expect. I mean, they are. And Russ, you and I had this. Remember, we had this funny discussion one time. We're sitting there watching the Flyers warm up, and we're up in the press box, and there's this German, new age techno run amok music going on. That's just absolutely horrible. It basically to go off the Saturday Night Live theme of a couple nights ago. It's like touch the monkey, love the mucking music. Touch the monkey, love the monkey music. Just incredible. Like a man eating a pear out of a hat. That kind of stuff. Just ridiculous craziness. And we're like, there's no way these Flyers players have chosen this music. This music was so horrible, and it was mind-numbing, and the fans weren't into it, at all. I mean, this is doing nothing to get the crowd psyched up, but at all. But then, so I wrote out there, I tweeted out, I'm like, really, they really have to, and I'm not one to be critical of things like this, but I'm like, this is just, having been a kid who, grew up having to go to warm-ups all the time and seeing great music, basically it was rock and roll, right, when we were kids. It was ZZ Top or whatever. It was the 80s music at times, but it wasn't this. This was just crazy stuff. And I tweeted it out, and sure enough, people responded, well, Claude Giroux picks all the music for the Flyers warm-ups. It's his music. It's his selection. I'm like, I just could not imagine, having a dinner party at Claude Giroux's house and walking in, and that would be playing.
Yeah, one of those awful songs was a cover of "What I Like About You" by the Romantics, and I was like, "It's awful. Just play the original."
The original is bad.
But at least the original is better than what.
Well, it has to be better than, if you remember when Jeremy Roenick was in Philadelphia. He had the disco routine that he did at 5 o'clock before every game. He brought in the disco ball, and he would Jeremy thinks he's an excellent dancer.
Oh yes, as we learned. And so you think he can dance or whatever show he was on?
Yeah. So it is interesting. But getting back to my burst frozen pipe.
Yes.
It's remarkable how even for people who are accustomed to cold, how this has become such a huge story. I talk to people living in Massachusetts who are dealing with that, and I live in Michigan. I've grown up with winter. I know what winter is, and it's cold. I mean, it's just really cold. And I thought maybe it was just because I was older, but the younger folks, they agree that it's cold. I think everybody agrees that it's for some reason this winter has been remarkably cold, even for people who are accustomed to cold.
Oh yeah.
It's not because I'm going through the same thing. It's like I've lived in Buffalo my entire life. I've lived through the blizzards. I've lived through ice storms and everything. The last 2 years, I mean, the winter last year lasted until mid-March, and I'm praying to God that doesn't happen this year because I think I'll go insane if it does. It was minus 11 here yesterday morning. It was minus 4, and that's a heat wave. It went up 7 degrees. I mean, I can't take it much longer. It needs to get up into the 20s and 30s, and I need to be able to get out of the house. Otherwise, I'm going to go insane.
Yeah, what is the temperature that you guys will wear? Like my wife gets mad at me all the time because I don't wear a coat ever. Like I never really wear a coat. Like to me, a coat, I'll wear a coat to fix the rink, or to clean to do the rink. But when you're driving someplace, just to put on a winter coat, even if it's ridiculously cold, makes no sense to me because you're in a car, it's going to get warm soon. You're going to be at a place it's going to be warm, and you're going to have this giant coat.
I'm with your wife on this one, Ack. Like, yeah. If you're not wearing a winter coat, you're just not getting out enough because
it was -4 in Manhattan. People were like, they were not happy. The sun wasn't shining. It was the coldest since like 1880 something. It was awful.
Yeah. I mean, because it's if I just go down to, I live less than a mile from a Kroger. So it's like one of those things where it's like 1930s type shopping for us. We don't go and buy $300 worth of groceries. Well, I run up to Kroger, just like you're going to your local butcher. And it's a 50-yard walk, from my spot to Kroger, and I need a coat. I mean, it's right now.
Do it.
It takes a lot for me to succumb and put on the winter coat because most of the time I wear like a heavy hoodie. But right now, with it being in minus temperatures, I got the heavy winter coat. I got the gloves. I look like I'm ready for the German invasion of Russia in 1941.
I'm ready for Stalingrad too. I mean, with the wind chill, it's like -30 here.
I know. Oh man, that's awful.
It's ridiculous, and even on a 40 or 50-yard walk, and my driveway is 80 yards long, so if I walk my driveway, I need a coat. You know what I mean?
Well, how often have you done this? This is the last question before you get started. Okay, in the middle of the night, you need something out of the car.
I never need anything out of my car in the middle of the night.
Never need anything out of your car in the middle of the night? All right, well, you see, maybe I'm just but yeah, I've definitely needed stuff out of my car in the middle of the night, and it's like you're in your pajamas, and how cold will it be when you're just to do it, just to run to your car in your pajamas?
What do you have in your car? I mean, I have to ask, like, what do you have in your car that you need in the middle of the night? I mean, what do you keep in your car? Like, should I even ask? Should we call a lawyer before you answer that? What do you?
I think a can opener. It's obviously a can opener.
Yeah.
Well, no, that bottle openers. Yeah, sure, that could be in there. But I have a great story that I have to share real quickly. When we lived in our old townhouse, there was our neighbor next door had a younger, like a teenage woman was among the kids they had, and she had a lot of teenage friends, and they were all hip and young and all that. And it was the kind of townhouse where we had a driveway which you could park one car, and then we had to park our other car across the street in like a little spot. So one night I just had to get something out of the car, so I ran to the car, and it was like 1 in the morning, and it was warm, and I'm just like wearing your boxers and your t-shirt, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna run to the car. I can do this. This is no problem. 1 in the morning. No one in this neighborhood's up. So I got to my car, and just as I arrived to my car, this girl pulled up with her friends, right next door, So I am in my car now, and I'm like literally, in a t-shirt and boxers, and I'm standing there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh man, I can't go back. So my car, she doesn't. So I'm just in my car. I'm ducked down now, and I'm like, now I'm really feeling like creepy. I'm ducked down, and then they proceed to have like a car party, where they sit on top of the car and drink, and for the next hour and a half, 90 minutes, I sat in my car waiting for them to go, and they finally left. I went back inside. Forget what I had to get. It was probably a phone charger or something like that. And I'm like, so I spent 90 minutes in my car. Oh man.
All right, let's talk some hockey.
Good times. Let's talk hockey. All right, we don't have Josh today, so we're just gonna go Mike, Russ, then Kevin. We'll go from there. All right, here we go. It's the 17th. It's Tuesday.
2015.
February 17th. Hey, Hockey World! It's Tuesday, February 17th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast where Kevin, Mike, and I are joined by others like Russ and whoever we can find who wants to hang out with us that day, and we share the news with you. Yes, every day at 1 o'clock, so you don't have to pay attention to what's going on in hockey. You can just live your lives and watch, Downton Abbey, which I know many of you are doing. Probably not the Downton Abbey crowd. Anyway, I wanted to start today with an interesting rumor because we are now under 2 weeks to trade deadline, and so we're going to be talking rumors a lot, of course, and not the entire day, but we'll be having plenty of them, which I know will please the many emails I get that say we should talk rumors all the time. But we're not going to do that all the time. But we are going to talk about this one, and I'm so glad Russ is on tonight because this is perfect for Russ. So Russ, my blog today has the Devils. Has the Islanders considering moving for Jágr, as we had talked about before. But also, when I talked to the person, they said they also would consider Elias in a move. Now, Elias still has a year to go on his deal. He still has one more year to go. But the thinking was, Elias is a player who has, obviously tons of playoff experience. Garceau really likes. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on this concept?
I don't think they should take two old guys because
no, it wouldn't be two. It would be one or the other. It would be one or the other. It was like not just Jágr. You wouldn't be picking up both of them, but it would be maybe Jágr, but perhaps if we don't get Jágr, maybe Elias, that kind of thing.
No, I could see either one of them going. Elias might be the better one actually because he could play some defense. The Islanders have such a fast team that may be better without Jágr and better with Elias because he's a little faster than Jágr these days. That would probably suit them because they already have a puck control team with the kid line. They have Anders Lee and they have Brock Nelson, and so they can control the puck. That's not the issue. So I think with that playoff experience, I think Elias would actually be the better fit, and I could see that happening. And look, and that perfect example is somebody needed to settle down the Islanders in that game against the Rangers, and they couldn't. And I don't want to say they made it easier for the Rangers to come back and win, but they definitely didn't make it hard for them.
Yeah, no, and that was I saw that too in that game. And we've seen it before with the Islanders a couple times this year against the Flyers, even in games where watching them play, and against the Penguins once too, that they are definitely still a young team, and and Kevin, like we've talked about before, how they've got to maybe lose before they win in the playoffs. What are your thoughts on Elias, perhaps?
Well, I think both of those players would benefit, the Islanders. Even Jágr at his speed, you don't, even if you're a speed team, you don't have to have everybody who can skate 100 miles an hour. And I thought, when I watch the Devils now, I'm so impressed with Jágr's ability to play what I would call a half-court offense. He can still play a role of controlling the puck, but would I agree that Elias would be a better fit for the long term? Yeah, going into a new building. He's a pro's pro. He's a terrific offensive player, and it makes a lot of sense. Next season, I'm assuming they're going to be spending more money, and they'll be in a different building, and their ticket prices will be different. I'm sure their fan base. I wouldn't be shocked if they sell out every game in that small arena with the new fan base they have. So they could be looking at a different situation where his salary wouldn't be all that much for them to assimilate into their budget.
Yeah, I'm Mike.
Elias provides a championship pedigree. I think he still has something left. I've seen him play a few games this year when they played Toronto, scored a shootout goal, scored a game-winning goal. I think he's still got skill. He doesn't have the speed that he used to, but I think he can still play a two-way game. The contract is $5.5 million next year. I don't think he's fallen off yet. It's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of another in the respect that, the one thing that if you do trade for Jágr, you still have that space open next year, and I'm not sure what the Islanders would have to give up for either one of them. Probably, maybe a draft pick, maybe a prospect. But the thing is, the Islanders don't have a lot of draft picks because they traded their first in the deal with the Sabres, and I believe they traded their second in the deal for Boychuk. So I don't know how many picks that they have. So it would probably have to be an existing prospect. And maybe the Devils will do that since it would be cap relief for them in the short term with Jágr, and for next year with Elias, but they have, I believe, 10 unrestricted free agents at the end of this year. So cap situation is not a not a problem for them. So I think that the Islanders would have to make it worth their while to give them one of those veteran players.
Well, I think so.
Yes. Islanders moving Casey Kazikis in that Devils deal. I could. Maybe you give him Kazikis and you give him maybe someone like Scott Mayfield, a very promising defenseman who could just about step right in now for the Devils. Maybe that's what they would take, without a pick. And maybe that's what they do.
I like that. That would be an interesting move for them, I believe. And it would really signify, though, if they moved Elias would definitely be the end of that era. Like that. I mean, Brodeur is part of course, is the end of that era. But with Elias, that would be completely ending. And it makes me wonder about Lou Lamoriello, because I don't know. I've always been of the belief that Lou Lamoriello wasn't going to live through a rebuild, and I think we've seen him. We've seen him prove that pretty much every year. Like he goes out and signs players that aren't rebuild players at all.
Well, I have a lot of faith in Lou Lamoriello's ability to change on the fly, simply because history shows that he's done it so often. I mean, he's really been so adept at changing this team. But it'd be interesting to get Russ's take on this in particular because of his knowledge and prospects. But I think they have to rebuild this team from the ground up. Like their prospect list is not good enough, and they don't have enough younger players on their team, and it's almost like this is a complete do-over. Even they're in a worse situation than the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, they have a couple of players, but mostly they got to start over.
Yeah,
Dave Cox is one of the best in the business. The issue's been with the Devils is that they haven't had extraordinarily high picks in the last 5 years, 10 years. And so they're getting mid-range prospects, and look, David's still finding like feathers in the hat. Damon Severson was a second-round pick. He's playing with the Devils now. I mean, a lot of teams passed on him, so they're getting good players. Josh Jacobs, the guy who they got last year, defenseman, he's really young, USHL. So there's going to be 3 years, 4 years till you see him. But offensively, they are missing prospects. There's no question about it, and they almost do need to bottom out one of these years to get one. And I think I have no problem with them having the ability to get one, because really David Conte has been in the top 3 best guys drafting in the NHL for the last 20 years, honestly.
Well, the thing is, though, Adam Larson has been a disappointment so far. I've seen him play a couple times, and he played a little better recently, but he has overall been a disappointment I think he was a number 5 pick overall. Right. And then they signed Zajac and they signed Henrique, 2 players who at the beginning of their careers have had a lot of promise, but they've really disappointed me. And once they got those long-term deals, their play has seemed to fall off, and they've had some injury problems. I don't know if those are players that you sort of build around. I agree with what Kevin is saying. I think this team needs to be blown up and restarted, and I don't know if Lou Lamoriello is going to be the guy who wants to do that.
Well, I think there's still hope for Henrique. Like Zajac, I think people overestimated his impact as an offensive player.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a very, he's a pro's pro. He does his job. He's
worked well with Parise, and that was the thing too, right? So that was
yeah. But I mean, I've never viewed him as a guy that a first line guy that you build your offense around. He's just he's certainly not Taves or centers of that ilk. So and the thing about it, Larson, is interesting. Like how much, and again, I think this will be interesting to get Russ's take on. How much of this problem with Larson is it all Larson? Did everybody misread him? Did all the scouts misread him, or did they damage him by bringing him over way too early and attempt to get him started early? And boy, he's never recovered from that. So did everybody just misread him? Because I remember people just raving about him, or they hurt and stunned his growth by bringing him over too early. Russ, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they may have brought him over a little too early, but I thought people were a little too flowery for what his offense was maybe going to be. I never really saw the offense, but we were expecting a really good mobile defenseman that could shut guys down. He is playing a little better lately. He is showing some offense. I do think the early start did hurt him, though, because there were a lot of tools there. There really were, and I don't think his mental makeup is bad. I've interviewed him. I think he thinks the game the right way. I think it is a matter of also having that great partner to be on a NHL defense with, and the Devils don't have that anymore. Name me a really solid, great NHL defenseman on the Devils, and I think that's part of it too. Is there's no one to sort of take him under their wing. So I think the way the team has sort of crumbled hasn't helped the young player in a situation where it's so hard on defense to get better at a young age. And so I think it's a combination of those things.
Yeah, and I like Larson in the first couple. I mean, to me, when I first saw Larson, I mean, you could say he was overrated, but I didn't know anything about him as a prospect as much as I liked watching him play early on in his career when he was he played some pretty strong games, at least that I saw live, and it was kind of surprised how he fell into the doghouse so quickly. So it's perhaps, it could be, the Luke Shen thing, like Mike put into our chat room. Like Luke Shen was definitely brought along too quickly, but or at least that's the belief there, right? And
no, it definitely was. And the thing was Luke Shen played his most effective hockey as an 18-year-old. But they were averaging, I believe, 22 or 23 minutes with an 18-year-old defenseman, and you don't do that if you want proper development of a young player, especially on the blue line, unless it's a guy who's a freak like Aaron Ekblad, who may be a guy who plays for 15 years in this league. You can't throw an 18-year-old defenseman in there and throw him to the wolves, especially when Toronto was a building club at that point. I think they made big mistakes, and I think to an extent Jersey made a little bit of a mistake rushing Larson. Now he seems, like I said, to be playing a little better now, and there's still hope. But his path to success has been sort of strewn with potholes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think the player development model on the Devils is broken. I think they're drafting the right guys, but they're changing coaches so often, and with all of that turnover, it is hurting their younger players, guys. And you're mentioning the players, Henrique and all these guys. They do have ability and promise, but they haven't had a coach for 2 or 3 years in a row to really, other than DeBoer for a couple of years, it's been a revolving door, and I think that's been hard on them too.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. I do agree with that too. All right, I wanted to look at the Eastern Conference wildcard race today with you guys because it's gotten really interesting, actually. The Florida Panthers, they're not going away. We keep expecting that. Okay, Florida, this is it. They've done as well as they can. The Bruins are struggling mightily. They really haven't played well at all. Flyers have played very well in their last 10 games. They're the best, playing the best of the best of those teams. And it really is now it is now a 3-horse race for a 1 spot. That's because the top of the division, at least, the Atlantic Division is crazy. Is that 4 teams within 5 points of each other? Pittsburgh, the Rangers, the Islanders, and the Caps are all right there. All of those teams are going to make the playoffs. So this really has come down to this. And the schedule, when you look at the schedule, like we talked about before, the Flyers having an easy schedule, but the Bruins have a kind of a tough schedule. And I wanted to look at how this plays out. So let's go through the Bruins schedule for a second, and let's Mike, do you have a pen on you?
Yeah.
Cool. If you have a pen, because I was looking for a pen, which you would think I would have, but I don't have in this day and age. So.
Like one Obama, we could go into the audience and pay $5 for a pen. Anybody has a pen, we'll give you $5.
That's right. All right, so we're going to go through the Bruins now. Malcolm Subban is getting his first start tomorrow night in the NHL. Against the Oilers, Malcolm Subban. So I think this is a good spot for them to bring him in, Russ. I did want to mention that for a second. Subban, I don't think they're bringing him in to trade him. Do you?
I think they are maybe bringing him in to showcase him. I think that's a possibility. It's either because I don't think you could get much for Svedberg on the open market, but Svedberg is clearly a good backup. You could get a lot for Subban if he has a good showing here, so I think they might be showcasing him.
Okay, all right. So he's going up against the Oilers. So we got the Oilers. We're all in agreement. Kevin, they beat the Oilers.
Yes.
All right, let's go with a win there. All right, I'm going to go to Russ. You get to pick the next game, the Blues. So they got the Blues on Friday.
That's a loss.
It's a loss. All right. Then Mike, you get the Hawks on Sunday.
That's a loss.
It's a loss. Okay. So we're not getting any. So we're just gonna. So okay, then we got the Canucks on Tuesday, and
This
I
is
will say
in Vancouver.
in Vancouver. They just lost to Vancouver at home, 5-2. I'm gonna give them I'm gonna give them 1 point out of this game. I'm gonna say this is gonna be like a 1 point. They'll get a point out of this game because there will be a little bit of a rematch there. So let's give them that. All right, and then you've got New Jersey. They're
That's
back
a win.
home. Yeah,
That's a
they're in
win.
New Jersey. Sorry, Vancouver is actually at home. Sorry about that.
Okay, and you have to expect that by the time.
Yeah.
And you have to expect by the time that they play New Jersey will have started to do the exodus of
Right.
some of their veterans, so it'll be an even easier opponent.
So they get the win, and then they end the month of February at home against Phoenix. So give them another win there, right?
Yeah.
All right. So that's Boston. All right. So let's now go into Philly and Florida because I think this is a worthwhile thing to do because to me.
That's 7 of a possible 12 points for Boston.
7 of a possible 12 points. Okay, so we can see how this plays out because I think that this is kind of an interesting one. So let me bring up Florida. Sorry about this. It's a little slow for some reason. All right, so the Florida Panthers. Let's bring up their schedule. All right, so the Panthers schedule. Here we go.
They play Toronto tonight. That's a victory.
Right, they play Toronto tonight. That's a victory. All right, then we'll give them.
Although Toronto does, our mutual friend Sean Vetter said that Toronto finally did get their number 1 center. The only problem is they got him 10 years too late in Olli Jokinen.
Yeah, right. There you go. All right, so they've got Toronto. Then they go, Kevin. They go to Montreal on Thursday. No, they have Montreal at home on Thursday. Sorry, I guess it's home. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not beating Montreal.
They're not beating Montreal, right? So that's a loss. Ottawa Saturday, Russ.
That's win.
The win.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh on Sunday. That's a loss, right? Then they have back-to-back with Chicago, Tuesday and Thursday. That's a tough one.
Well, I would give them a split on that act because there's so many Chicago ties with Florida that I think they'll get.
Give them a split. Okay, give them a split. And then they end the month in Buffalo.
That's a win.
That's a win. Okay, so what do they end up with, Mike?
They end up with 4 wins out of 12, 8 out of a possible 12 points.
Possible 12 points. All right. All right.
So
finally, we'll do the Flyers.
They gain a point. They gain a point on Boston.
They would gain a point on Boston. They're only what?
4 points behind right now.
4 points behind right now. Yeah. So, all right. So let's do the Flyers and see what they get. But this is just, if you remember now, as much as everyone says these teams are out of it, let's finish this through here. Okay. So the Flyers are home for the next 4 days. They've got Columbus tonight at home. Columbus, they don't play well against Columbus. Russ,
That's a loss.
I think that's a loss. All right, I'm gonna give him. Can you give him? Okay, just a straight up loss.
Give him
Not
a
gonna give
point.
He'll get a point.
I'll give him a point there. All right. Then they have Buffalo on Thursday at home. That's a win. All right. Then they have Nashville at home on Saturday. That's a loss.
That's a loss.
Then they have the Capitals at home on Sunday.
That's a win.
I think that's a win.
The Caps and the Caps. I'll give them a win on that one. Then they go into Carolina on Tuesday.
That's a win. Although Carolina has been playing a lot better ever since Jordan Staal came back, and they played pretty well last night against Ottawa. But I think I'll give Philadelphia the win on that one.
They got Toronto on Thursday.
On that.
Win-win, and then they end. So they've got Toronto. We'll give them 2 wins there, and then they end next Saturday at home against the Rangers.
That's a loss.
They're not beating the Rangers.
That's a loss, right? So give them a loss there. Okay, so what do they grab? What are the points total there then, Mike? We'll figure out where this will be at the end of the month.
They played 7 games out of a possible 14 points. They have 9 of a possible 14. So they would gain 2 points on the Bruins, but with an extra game.
Right. Okay. So they gained 2 points. So at the end of all this, sorry, the wild card race would look like this. So the wild card race would be
Florida down by 3, Philadelphia down by
3, the Flyers down by 5, right?
4.
Down by 4. All right, and that's with a month to go and more. That's with 6 weeks to go in the season, right? Because we go into April.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. I think it's a 3. I really think it's a 3-team race.
But that's not taking into consideration what any of those three teams do before the deadline, because we know that Boston is looking to add a forward.
Yep.
We know that's what might be behind this Subban situation. Philadelphia, we talked about it yesterday with Delzato and with Timonen coming back means, and Florida, they may be buyers and sellers, moving out the Fleischmans, but maybe willing to bring in other forwards and maybe even make the home run swing and try to get Phil Kessel, as Harvey Fialkoff reported yesterday that they're interested in Kessel. So who knows?
Right. I mean, we don't.
Here's my take.
Go ahead, Kevin. What's your take?
Well, my take on this whole race is that it's all about the Bruins. Like, if the Bruins play like the Bruins, I don't care how well Philadelphia plays or Florida is. I mean, the Bruins are a really good team. We all know that. They've had some issues. Losing Iginla and Thornton, has eroded their depth, and they have trouble scoring goals now, and guys haven't stepped up. But it's really odd. Like, that roster should be good enough to be playing better than it is. The only reason why Florida's still in it and Philadelphia's still in it is the Bruins have faltered. So, I think that puts the pressure on Chiarelli to make a move here. We know that their cap situation is, I think, what did Ty tell us last Friday? They can add a $3 million player, right?
Yeah.
So, what that says is, they're going to have to, get one of the bottom rung scorers. They're not going to be able to bring in a premium guy. So what's Stewart's number in Buffalo?
It's right in there.
He's around right 4. It's around 4. I'll double check, but I think it's
4. Yeah, yeah.
But Buffalo to get a deal done will keep salary. 4.15 for Stewart, but they would keep salary to get a deal done. Yeah, they might
get a decent.
Right. Well, that's true. It does come down to Buffalo. I completely agree. And Boston, I completely agree with you on this.
But the thing is,
go ahead, Kevin.
Well, Florida has been an impressive team in just their ability to survive and hang around in this, because it's really been about the team's goaltending and defensive play, because they've struggled to score goals really the whole season. So, it'll be fascinating to see what Talon does. How important is the playoffs? It should be very important. They're still trying to win fans. So.
Oh yeah, it should be extremely important. And will they have to trade Bergenheim? Which who's now demanding a trade, and that's a big offensive player, and they can't lose that. So they're in a spot where the guy's demanding a trade.
Yeah, they got to trade him. I mean, he's for whatever reason he hasn't hit it off with Gallant, and he's a proven playoff guy. Like, we remember how well he played. In the playoffs in the past, so you should be able to make a hockey trade for him. There are teams that are going to want him. So, Philadelphia should be better than it has been as well.
And I agree with what you're saying, Kevin, about if the Bruins are the Bruins, that this is not a race. But the problem is, I watched a lot of that game last night. They had a 3-0 lead in Calgary, and if it was the Bruins being the Bruins, that wouldn't have been a game, but they allowed Calgary to come back, and Calgary won in overtime. And it's just there's something missing, and they had that mini blip when they brought Pasternak back after the World Juniors, and he's still playing well, but there's something missing there, and maybe it's age, maybe it's just I don't know what it is, but there's something missing.
Their defensive play isn't Bruin like, and the Boychuk trade has had lingering effect the entire season. He was their bite, their snarl, he made them hard to play against, and they're less so now. And they make uncharacteristic mistakes. I watched their game the other day, and on the first goal, Dougie Hamilton made a play that rookies make, and I forgot who it was. on the next goal, there was another giveaway as well by a player that knows better. I can't think of who it was now, but you know, they really have not played like a Claude Julien team. I mean, we all know how I feel about Julien. I think he's in the top 3 coaches in the game. I think he's pulling all the levers, but they haven't responded. I think the team, even though they're trying to get a scorer because they feel rightly so that they need another one, I think they need a more proven defenseman back there as well.
Yeah, and Dougie, you know, the people don't remember. Dougie Hamilton's 21 years old. I mean, he's been in the league for 3 years, but he's still 21 years old. And Torrey Krug isn't exactly Rod Langway either in terms of being a defensive defenseman. So, you know, the blue line that they had in 2011 when they won the Stanley Cup. So, I mean, that is a consideration.
Yeah.
If I'm them, and this is just me, I would play Subban tonight. If he plays well, I would look to move him. I might even look to move Lucic too, because I really think Lucic is a bad character guy for them, and he's not performing nearly at the level that he used to. And if they can move Lucic's salary, then they can bring back a premier player for those 2 players, no question about it, and probably get a pick or 2 as well.
Yeah, but
what
if you're
team
going down
would
the
take on Lucic though? I mean, like that's such a can of worms.
Maybe it's the team they're playing. Maybe it's the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe they trade Lucic and Subban and they get Jordan Eberle or somebody like that.
I mean, you're going down the road of, you know, we've already been saying that they're not the big bad Bruins anymore with the loss of Boychuk, with the loss of Nathan Horton a few years ago. If they move Lucic, that's dead and gone. Then there is no big bad Bruins. He's the one remnant of that team.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Last night, the Winnipeg Jets lost a couple players just to injury. They lost Perreault and they lost Stafford, who just arrived.
Yeah, I saw the Perreault injury, and it did look fairly serious. It was an ankle or a knee.
What are we saying?
What I would say, I want to say is beware of the Kings. I want to talk about the Kings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the Kings because I really would rather talk about the Kings because they are suddenly alive. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, they really are, and I find it fascinating that it was almost as if the hockey community didn't want to talk about the Kings for fear they would wake up.
Right.
And you know, the first rule of the dread of the Kings is don't talk about the Kings. and we have had no discussions about the Kings. I mean, we have talked about it, but you don't hear people talking about them. But now people are starting to hear the drumbeat. The Kings just, 5 in a row now, doing it in convincing fashion. And here's the thing about the Kings that I find most interesting. It feels like they've had a wretched season. Voynov has been gone, suspended the whole season. Quick hasn't been the same guy. Pearson got injured. Martinez has had the issue as well. They had to send Richards down. What a mess they are, eh? What a mess the Kings are. You look it up, they're giving up 27 shots per goal. They're 8th in the league in 5-on-5 scoring. They're a top 10 defensive team. They still have 2 Stanley Cups in the last 3 seasons. They still have Daryl Sutter riding them mercilessly every day. You got to beware of the Kings. It's the same story that I used to say about the Devils in the 90s. If they get into the playoffs, they can win the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And
I go back. They're the San Antonio Spurs. They play rope-a-dope all year. They really do.
Yeah. Well, I think they've they're figuring out the guy together. I have a lot of faith. I think Lombardi doesn't get enough credit for being a guy that knows which levers to pull. I think he's waiting it out, counting his dimes every day on his salary cap, and he'll make one move. He's not going to find another Voynov because there's not one out there. But he'll strengthen that defense a little bit, and it's still going to be a dogfight. I don't think it's a slam dunk because that West is tough. Winnipeg has shown survival skills. Minnesota, we've talked in the last week or so about how strong they've been. And in Vancouver and Calgary, they just won't die.
I mean, right now the race is Vancouver and Calgary with 67, San Jose with 66, They have 58 games played. The Kings are 64 with 56 games played, so they have 2 games in hand on San Jose, and then Minnesota has 63 points with 56 games. Kevin, Eric Duhatschek, who you and Eck do the Cranky Writer show with, he wrote yesterday that the Kings are talking with Toronto not about Dion Phaneuf but about Roman Polak. And Roman Polak fits everything that they need. A right-hand shot defenseman, somebody who's signed through next year at less than $3 million, tough, defensive-minded, mobile. I mean, that would be a perfect fit for them with their salary cap restrictions and with the questions about Voynov. I mean, to me, if that's realistic, I think that gets done, and I don't think it would cost them a ton. It may cost them a draft pick and a really good prospect, but I think that they'd be willing to make that deal, and that would really help them a lot.
Well, are the Kings going to have to make a move, or they're going to have to make a move to draft based on re-signing guys next year, right? We hear Toffoli, they may not be able to afford them.
Right, and they have a lot big contracts coming up next year, so they're going to have to try to find somebody who's a UFA that's going to come off their books at the end of this year. I mean, to me, the game that I watched last week with the Kings was the Calgary game, and that was the game. I was at the Barry Melrose game, and I watched it because the Kings were wearing their old school gold uniforms, which I just think is phenomenal. One of the first hockey jerseys they ever had. It was Barry Melrose night, right? So they had like the which was weird that they didn't wear the old black and silver uniforms, which in Barry Melrose's honor, but they didn't. So they wore the old gold uniforms. And in that game against Calgary, even though it was a 5-3 score, they outshot the Flames 45-18. They just absolutely rolled the Flames. And they came out from the very time, from the moment the puck dropped, it was as if this team was completely back to their playoff form instantly. Like they had thrown a switch, and I think that's the one. That's the difference between a team like this. They actually can throw a switch, and they've shown that they can throw the switch now in 5 games in a row. It's just, and then beating good teams along the way. Beating Tampa, that's no small team last night that they took down. Tampa's a good team. Yeah, it's hard to imagine them not making the playoffs. To me, the team that I'm kind of worried about and how I predicted this to go down, I must say, all those months ago, was that the Sharks could be in trouble. And I think the Sharks could actually be in trouble here. I think that, they are a team. I see the Wild coming. I think the Wild are in. I see the Kings coming. I think the Kings are in. I wonder about the Sharks. I really do. And this outdoor game is one of the more important outdoor games as far as standings goes that we have seen. Like this is a really big game for both of these teams.
Yeah.
If the Kings go in there and dominate the Sharks, that's a big problem for San Jose. They've got to win that game.
I completely agree. This is a really important competitive game, especially with the Kings playing as well as they are, and as you said, Sharks knowing they're vulnerable. And the 2 teams have to fall out. Are you predicting then Winnipeg falls out as well, or?
Yeah. I do. I think Minnesota and LA will make it, and I do believe that. And Calgary, I'm not 100% convinced on either. So.
See, the thing with the Sharks is right now, I mean, their goal differential is -1. You've got Niemi and Stalock there. I don't think that that's exactly an awe-inspiring goaltending tandem. If there was a goaltender out there that they could bring in that would be an upgrade over them, I think they would do it. But they also need to improve on defense. I mean, I don't think that, Boyle was getting old, but I think they still miss Boyle. And the fact that they moved Burns back to defense, he was never that good of a two-way defenseman. He's more of an offensive guy. So I think they need somebody on the blue line, and unless they're prepared to move out like some of their prospects or somebody on their roster, I don't see how they do it.
Yeah, no, the Sharks are in trouble. They really are. You watch them play. They have the old Sharks disease that they destroy team. I mean that they play up or down to their competition. That's just what they do. And the Kings have done that too this year. The Kings and Sharks have that in common, that they play up and down to their competition. But the Kings, have a switch that the Sharks don't have. So, as this all runs down,
let me ask Kevin something, because we brought it up yesterday and he wasn't on the show. Kevin, the Nashville deal that with getting Franzen and Sandarelli, do you think that you're going to have Stan Bowman and Doug Armstrong react to that move to counter it if they can to add before the deadline, or do you think they're going to just stay status quo with what they have?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question and a fair question, because we've seen that in the past of teams trying to keep up with the Joneses. But in this case, Bowman just has no maneuverability room. Yeah. So there's really nothing he can really do. And we always say, well, you can make a hockey trade, but you look on their roster, who do they move? They kind of need all of their guys to be the Blackhawks.
A hockey trade would be more disruptive, if anything.
Correct. That's exactly right.
I want to throw this out there too, that I believe, obviously what we said before, that teams would rather play the Predators in the playoffs than the Kings.
For sure.
And and that's as crazy as it's. I don't think the Predators making that move is being taken seriously by the Hawks and Blues as much as if it would have been if the Hawks or Blues made a move. If the Blues made a move, I think the Hawks would have reacted more to it. If the Hawks made a move, the Blues would react more to it. But the Predators making this move, I still don't think that people are going to take Nashville seriously yet.
What's interesting is the Predators' defense now is pretty big.
Yeah.
You got Weber and Seth Jones, and Franzen is a big guy. I don't think he plays 6'5", but as we've said before, size has two elements to it. There's the physical nature of the guy throwing around, and there's also, as coaches always say, the wear and tear that comes from trying to push those bigger players out of your way.
Right.
But that trade, to me, and I wrote about this yesterday in a column, was people don't see David Poile as an aggressive general manager, and my argument is he's one of the most aggressive general managers in the game today. He's viewed as a conservative, kind of a stately guy who's very quiet, a pro's pro, but no one ever says, man, that David Poile, he's an aggressive GM. But the truth is he is. You look at his history, he has a long history of major trades, starting with the Ron Langway trade in Washington. Even this past summer, Hornquist for James Neal. He fires one of the most respected coaches in the game in Barry Trotz because he sensed that he had run his course. He got acquired Peter Forsberg, years ago. He talked Korea into coming to Nashville. And now, with everybody talking about Franzen being the guy, he goes out and gets it done for both Santorelli and Franzen, who are two of the most sought-after guys in the marketplace. So, I guess my point is that people sort of underestimate David Poile because he hasn't won a cup, and I think that his lack of a cup speaks more to his circumstances and bad luck than anything else. I think he's a pretty effective general manager.
Yeah, and he did the same thing that he did a few years ago when they had Suter before he was going to go free agency. He traded a first-round pick to Buffalo to get Paul Gaustad, who they thought was a player that they needed. As a checking line center. They went out and traded for Mike Fisher, for similar reasons. I mean, those are decisive moves, and you have to admire somebody who goes out and does that. And also, when he was in a rebuilding situation, he turns Martin Erat into Philip Forsberg. So, I mean, he's one of the best. He definitely is one of the best.
And he's traded away more first-round draft picks than most other GMs have. And I think that goes a long way, Russ, into the terms that he's one of those guys who's really confident in his drafting abilities, and the first round he thinks is overrated. Yeah,
they find guys in other rounds. There's no doubt. I mean, look at Kevin Kline. He's a second-round pick. How's he performing with the Rangers? Right. The other thing about Gaustad, he did get killed for that trade, but Gaustad's like 4th or 5th in the league in faceoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And he's still with the team, and he's still a very valuable contributor. And what's forgotten about that trade as well is there are a lot of teams trying to get Gaustad, including I remember the Detroit Red Wings. Really wanted him. To do exactly what he's done in Nashville. So I thought that was a really significant trade, and thought it made them stronger. Their defense was already really good, and now it's better. And Santorelli, I think, fills a void there. I mean, he's a very versatile guy, and they'll plug him in.
We know him.
Well, that was the big thing, Russ. We talked about that yesterday. Is that he brought in two guys who know the whole scene there, who know the Nashville scene, who know what's going on. And that's also huge, because it's a different kind of hockey market, different kind of place to play, and two guys who liked it there before. So
that's why design.
They know what to order at Tootsie's.
They do. They know how to. They know the 2-drink minimum places. They know how to get out of it. They know how to slip out before you have to pay the bill.
And most of the reaction to that deal was positive on both ends. But I heard some criticism of Toronto that they made the move 2 weeks out, and they would have gotten more back if they would have traded Franzen and Santorelli separately. And I look at it in the sense that I think I would rather have a first-round pick in the bottom 7 or 8 in this draft than 2 seconds in the 50s, which they probably would have gotten for Santorelli and Franzen separately.
That's exactly why. The reason that deal got done was to get that first-round pick. They got Santorelli in the deal, and I think Toronto didn't want to take the chance on doing exactly what you said, which is to end up with 2 second-round picks or 2 thirds and a second. They felt and you know what? I support that as well. I think this is one of those things where if I'm Shanahan, I'm liking what Nonis did there because it's better to have that first-round draft pick in the hand than what you might get. So.
And it also gives them a chance to focus on other things because they have other deals still to make, and it gets that Francis and Santorelli are out of the picture. Winnick, there's still other players there that they want to move. So.
And they opened up $2 million in cap space as well, so they're going to be able to take on other salary and other deals if they need to. And I think that's going to be a part of what's going to happen. They may take on salary short term of players who are maybe at the tail end of their career because the Leafs aren't going to care about that because they're going to be down for a year or two, and those players they'll do that just to bring in prospects and draft picks.
Exactly. Well, it's time for everybody's favorite part of the show, the draft lottery simulator. Now, Kevin, yesterday, while you were away, the Buffalo Sabres won the draft lottery simulator.
Oh, maybe I'm the
for the first time. So we're going to see what happens today. They actually did win it, so we're going to run it today. Today's winner is.
Come on, big money.
I like the drum roll, Mike. The Ottawa Senators.
Wow.
Twice for the Senators.
Yes, this is the second time the Senators have won the draft lottery, and So as we've talked before, that the Sabres have a 20% chance of getting Connor McDavid and an 80% chance of getting Eichel. That's basically how we look at it.
Well, my question yesterday
to match the Chris Phillips #1 overall pick.
Here's my question yesterday: when Buffalo got the first pick, did they take Connor McDavid or did they go with Eichel?
We don't know.
Because maybe they're just so used to seeing his name that they would just go with him anyway. So
at this point, you should definitely be preparing more for Eichel, right, than you will for McDavid. As crazy as it sounds, because this has been nuts.
What I find interesting is if Edmonton ends up with the #2 pick, do they take Eichel?
No, they can't.
I've asked that question with the scouts, and they say that's just a stupid thought. They couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it, because I know what you're saying. There's logic. They desperately need a defenseman, but he said, that would be like, bypassing, like that. Like this is a generational draft. So you said you can't even consider that. So.
Well,
somebody else and get a defenseman. That's all.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if there's a team at #3 who doesn't want Hannafin, do they trade down and do they get like a veteran player? I mean, there's scenarios there, but I can't see them passing up Eichel at #2 if they have the #2 pick. But it is out there as a possibility.
You could take Eichel and you could trade Sam Reinhart for a defenseman if you don't want to have, if you need one that bad. They'll figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, but he was talking about the Oilers. Because the Oilers have been consulted.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
I know what he's saying. I mean, because they, it's become like it's such a huge thing in Edmonton, the lack of a defenseman. But I think you have to look at these two guys as not as traditional first and second picks, but of guys, in the same ilk as Crosby and. Lemieux and when those guys are available, because that's how the scouts are viewing.
Well, Edmonton has yet to win our lottery, and they've got a big good. They've got a 21 or whatever percent. They've got a 17% chance, something like that.
Yeah, it's
Edmonton
less
has yet to win it.
Trade Taylor Hall for a defenseman, then. That's all.
Yeah, or they've got a lot of players they could trade for a defenseman. They really could.
It's going to be
really
interesting in Sunrise, don't you think, Russ?
Right, and also, what you really want to do is, if I was LA, if I was Edmonton, I would be looking at, maybe adding some veteran defensemen into the fray, because
they tried that last summer, then we didn't like the guys they took.
Yeah, good luck trying to get them to come to Edmonton.
What we've seen is they can't get veteran defensemen to go there, right? So that's the issue as well. So that's also the problem right now.
That is such a big thing that I don't think fans truly appreciate, is the difficulty of trying to recruit to cold weather cities, and it doesn't have anything to do with Canada or everything. It's just it's cold there, and they haven't been good for a long time, and I think Winnipeg has an easier time recruiting than Edmonton, but they just don't have all the logistical things that other cities do have. So.
Well, I think it was Mike Russo who said this morning via Twitter that one of the main the main reasons for Winnipeg doing the deal came to get Tyler Myers was because Tyler Myers would be the eventual replacement for Byfuglien if Byfuglien leaves via free agency, because they can't guarantee that he doesn't want to stay there after next year. And you've got Myers locked up for 4 more years on a front-loaded contract, and he's locked in there. He can't get out of it. He's there in Winnipeg for 4 more years. So that was a main attractive point of that deal.
Wow.
See, if I'm probably trying to trade somebody on my roster to get another first-round pick. So maybe I could do a little more wheeling and dealing at the draft, and maybe then I could get a veteran defenseman.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would go that way. Wow, interesting stuff. Did you guys also, before we leave, did you guys see the story out that Tatana Ovechkin, Ovechkin's mom, has said that her son Alex, will soon have an advanced degree.
In diving?
No, he's basically the conversation. Okay, so here's in the above video. Ovechkin mom says her son finished a graduate program 2 years ago. I can't recall exactly what the name of his thesis was, but the fact is, right now he's preparing to defend his dissertation. He'll be defending it either this year or next.
Wow.
That's kind of shocking. So he's going to be a PhD, I guess?
Or the Russian equivalent,
Yeah, or whatever the Russian equivalent is, yeah. I don't know.
All I could say is, based on his hockey defense, it's going to be a tough battle.
Yeah. That's something else. Anyway, there you go. Just throwing that out there. Something to think about. If you're feeling bad about yourself because you have a good degree, but Ovechkin can go play hockey, and you're thinking, well, now he has a good degree too, so you're not anything. There you go. Just throwing that out there. Guys, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.